The main character tells about how he was dying. He's lying in a hospital bed, very thin. He says that he accidentally came to another world, being reborn in the city of Protos as the heir to the throne. The main character, surrounded by purple energy, looks at his hands and asks if this is the feeling of rebirth. He says that he has obtained a peerless ability. A burst of purple energy hurls a crowd of zombies into the air. The main character says that 4 beauties serve as his guard. He thought that untold riches and the highest rights lay ahead of him. The main character is sitting on a golden throne, leaning his face on his hand and crossing his legs. He says that he needs to watch out for the evil Protos guardians, as well as face the predators that live outside the Protos walls. A crowd of bloodied zombies is walking through the forest. The main character concludes that he thought he could enjoy his life, but it turned out that he was in the middle of a storm. A mysterious meteor fell in the Protos lands. Along with the meteor, there were also monsters from outer space, predators whose main source of food was humans. It only took a few years for them to spread all over the earth. The meteor brought many misfortunes, but it also caused evolution among humans. The Protos king, Longman, the strongest of them, became the leader of the entire world. Longman holds a white sphere of energy above his palm. In the fight against the hunters, Longman led 72 Protos guards and built the last resting place for his Protos people. However, in the fight against the predators, King Longman was defeated. On the ground among the broken trees are the bodies of people and monsters. What happened to Longman after that remains a mystery. City Hospital. A guy with brown hair and a red sweatshirt is lying on a hospital bed. Other than his brain, his body is completely still, like a vegetable. He is confined to this room and bed and has been in the hospital for 3 years, unable to cry, laugh, or even utter the slightest sound. His name is Suzayabai, 18 years old, and he is terminally ill. He has someone around him all the time, and on the TV on the wall, which is playing a basketball game, he sees his mother shedding tears every night. The doctor tells her to prepare everything you need, because the main character's illness is progressing rapidly, and you need to switch to a ventilator because at any moment he can stop breathing. Lightning flashes in the window behind the doctor, and the main character's mother falls to her knees in shock, clutching her face in her hands. Suzayabai reflects that he is afraid of death, but he thinks that it will be better than this life, and that if he dies, he hopes to meet God, and that he did not do anything wrong. The main character closes his eyes. Before the eyes of the main character is a woman's breast, barely covered with clothes. The girl with long blonde hair asks the main character to wake up, calling him master. She says with a worried face that they can't possibly die here. Suzayabai opens his eyes, rubbing his eye with his hand, surprised to find that his hand is moving. He glanced at the girl, who was glad that he was finally awake, and saw that she was sitting on top of him. There's a forest all around them. He asks who she is. Surprised to find that he can speak, he touches his mouth with his hand. The girl introduced herself with a smile as Zhao Ping and said that she was his personal guard today. He asks her to wait, saying that he doesn't understand what is going on, and draws attention to her clothes and the fact that she is sitting on him. Embarrassed, he says that he is already 18 and starts to say something, but suddenly his face tightens and his eyes bulge. White-faced and already on his feet, he looks down and thinks about why his bottom is standing up, and notes that it's a painful sensation, and that he's not sleeping. Zhao Ping looks at him from the side in disbelief and tries to call out to him. Suzayabai remembers lying in the hospital room and thinking that he should have died by now, and he doesn't understand how he ended up here. He remembers that he was diagnosed with myasthenia gravis and notes that it is gone. The girl asks if he's okay. Suzayabai turns around and replies that he feels great and says that he is wondering why she calls him master. Suzayabai points at himself with a puzzled expression and asks about the fact that he is the heir to the Protos throne, chosen by the Heavenly Lord Longaming. Zhao Ping replies with a smile that the king of Protos is the king of all humans, and that Protos is the only remaining place inhabited by humans. She adds that he is also responsible for all people. Suzayabai says that according to her, Longaming reborn him from another world. He waved his hand in front of his face and said it was nonsense and he only believed in science. Zhao Ping bit her finger and it started to bleed. She says that since he doesn't believe her, she will give him proof. The girl explains that the smell of blood should attract predators in the area, and the main character, having met them, should understand everything. Suzayabai asked again about the predators. The birds in the forest scattered restlessly. Behind the main character appears a crowd of monsters that look like zombies. Suzayabai asked if they were predators. Zhao Ping replies that this is true and explains that most of the territory is inhabited by them and they have turned their world into a horror. Her face tightened. After a short pause, Suzayabai asks the girl that her name is Zhao Ping and says that she doesn't seem to be deceiving him. Walking towards the predators, the main character tells her to leave and that he will deal with them. He explains that he has been lying down for 3 years and is happy to finally move his muscles. Zhao Ping notices that there are a lot of monsters and asks him if he is afraid. Suzayabai replies that he is horrified, but even more so, he doesn't want to see her die in front of his eyes. After a moment of surprise, the girl smiled and said that she understood. As Zhao Ping flew off the ground, she thought that Longming had chosen a good heir. A huge crowd of predators surrounded them from all sides. Su Xiaobai looks up in surprise as Zhao Ping flies up. Noticing the approaching monsters, the protagonist thought in fear that they were almost no different from corpses, so they should be slow. He concluded that if he ran as fast as he could, they wouldn't be able to catch up. The monsters quickly jumped towards Su Xiaobai. One of them swung his arm to attack. The main character is surprised to find himself in some green space. The voice tells him not to be afraid and that he has seen his bravery. Su Xiaobai asks about who said that and what kind of place it is. He sees the face of a man with long white hair. The man, raising his index finger, says that he is his inner strength and explains that they have the same soul. Zhao Ping, standing in the air, mentally asks Longman if his consciousness is really still in this world, to let her know. On the ground, the monsters formed a mountain of their bodies, climbing on top of each other. The girl thinks the one and only power is infinite darkness. A purple light shines from inside the zombie mountain. A burst of purple energy knocks the monsters back. At the center of this explosion is Su Xiaobai. Exhaling, he looks down at his hands and wonders if this is the feeling of rebirth. On the ground, there are monsters that are torn apart, shrouded in purple energy. Su Xiaobai noticed the small shapes floating in the air, glowing purple. When he sees them rushing toward him, he closes his eyes and covers his face with his hands. He notes that this is energy. Then he opens one eye in surprise. Looking at his hands, he notices the feeling of warmth and the fact that all the energy is concentrated in his body. Zhao Ping runs up to the main character and explains that there is no need to panic, and this is definitely his ability Infinite Darkness. Smiling, she explains that this ability can not only absorb energy from the surroundings, but also from opponents during combat. Su Xiaobai notes that there are supernatural forces in this world. With a smile, he assumes that his myasthenia gravis was cured due to superpowers. Noticing that Zhao Ping is crouched on one knee, the protagonist asks what she is doing. She replies that the Protoss won't last a day without him. Her face tightens, and she asks Su Xiaobai to return to Protoss and inherit the crown. Repeating her words about becoming king of Protoss, the protagonist replies with a smile that he is not happy. Huge bones lie in the ground, overgrown with grass. Dragons are circling in the sky. Su Xiaobai and Zhao Ping walk across the bridge leading to the Protoss gate. Behind a huge white wall, you can see a mountain with a snow-capped peak. Su Xiaobai asks why it is so necessary to return to Protoss right now. With a drooping face, he says that the first thing he has to do is find a place where he can fill his stomach. His stomach rumbles, and Zhao Ping covers his mouth with his hand in a slight grin. Looking at the high wall, Su Xiaobai asks if this is the happy escape shelter. He notes that this is a very high wall, but there is no gate. He adds that he doesn't want to climb over the wall. Zhao Ping walks up to the wall, holding out his palm in front of him, and tells him not to worry. She explains that this is a Protoss security system, and a Protoss resident is able to open the gate. Her palm touches the wall, and green magic rings radiate from it. Zhao Ping explains that this wall is 700 meters high and 20 meters thick, which is enough to deter any predator. Part of the wall rises, and a tunnel opens in front of them to the city, passing through the wall. A voice welcomes Zhao Ping home. Zhao Ping points to the side of the passageway and calls the protagonist inside. Su Xiaobai sees modern skyscrapers inside. The girl explains that although everything looks abandoned from the outside, but inside Protoss residents can still lead a peaceful lifestyle. She added that it was thanks to the Protoss guardians. Looking back at the closed entrance, Su Xiaobai asked about the Protoss guards. Zhao Ping explained that they were Protoss protectors. She explained that the Protoss was surrounded by a huge abyss and that there were only 12 entrances to the Protoss, each of which was guarded. She says that all Protoss guardians are elite fighters who have passed a multi-level selection, and according to their strength, they are divided into levels from strong to weak, S, A, B, C, D. Su Xiaobai wondered if there wasn't just one person watching the gate. Su Xiaobai and Zhao Ping walk out onto a busy street. A dreadlocked guy wearing a black tank top and camouflage pants, sitting on a crate with his hands clasped in front of his face, calls out to Zhao Ping. He tells her that she has repeatedly violated the ban on leaving the city without telling him or getting permission. This is a C-rank Protoss guardian, Tian Meng. She tells him that she misunderstood and she was just looking for Mr. Longman. People on the street start whispering about how stupid Zhao Ping is for still looking for Longman. Tian Meng replies with a smirk that Longman died 3 years ago and asks if she is looking for his corpse. The crowd of men behind him bursts out laughing. Zhao Ping clenches his hand into a fist and grits his teeth in anger. She remembers running through the woods in the rain until she falls to the ground among the bloodied bodies. The voice says how stubborn she is for running out of the city again, and that the guards have already said that Mr. Longman died on the battlefield. While stretching his arms, Su Xiaobai called out to Tianmeng and told him to keep an eye on the gate. Approaching them, the main character says that there are so many of them, and it is not nice to offend one little girl, and they should be ashamed. He stretches his legs. Tianmeng, getting up from the box, asked if it was a stranger. Passers-by whisper about how he dared to make Tianmeng angry, how he is a C rank and they are the head of this gate, and how young people are stupid. Tianmeng swung his fist to strike and said that the Protoss is not happy with strangers. The veins on his face bulged with anger. Su Xiaobai jumped back and dodged the punch, and Tianmeng's fist smashed through the sidewalk. He glared furiously at the protagonist, who landed to the side with his hand on the ground. Su Xiaobai grinned, noting that his body had become lighter, and this was the effect of absorbing energy. The men rushed towards the main character, cursing about how he dared to raise his hand to the guards. Suddenly they were pinned to the ground. A large glowing yellow seal can be seen on the ground around Zhao Ping. Spreading her arms out to the sides, she said that as long as she was here, no one would touch Su Xiaobai. Tianmeng, who remained standing, explained that it was an SR rank force attraction ability that created an Earth-like attraction within a radius. Then he added that he was sorry that the attraction was negligible, only tenfold. They shouted that they didn't feel anything and jumped towards Su Xiaobai, swinging his fist to strike. The main character caught his fist with his hand. Tianmeng was surprised to see the purple energy coming from the main character and the fact that his strength was draining. Su Xiaobai asks him with a smile that he didn't expect this. Tianmeng panicked and told him to stop. Zhao Ping called out to the main character. People on the street look at him in surprise. At the same time, somewhere in Protoss, a girl approaches a man in red floor-length clothing and a black crown, addressing him as Count Dracula. She is dressed in a red and black dress with a fur collar, has dark purple long hair and holds a long thin smoking pipe in her hand. She is in a rank Protoss Guardian. She said she thought Count Dracula felt it too. Dracula, holding a glass of wine in his hand, replies that this is the power of Lunman. Count Dracula is an S-rank Protoss Guardian. Su Xiaobai approaches Tianmeng with his arm outstretched, surrounded by purple energy. Tianmeng looks much thinner as he falls to the ground and notes that it is endless darkness. He asks about whether this is not Mr. Longaming's strength and who Su Xiaobai is. The main character looks down at him with a threatening look and says that he is his daddy. After a while, Su Xiaobai calls out to Zhao Ping. She stands behind him with a smile and says that she is here. He asks if they can go out to eat, adding that he is about to starve to death. Passing by surprised passers-by, he warns that his eating power is enormous, and Zhao Ping replies that he can eat as much as he wants. Passers-by are surprised to discuss that he just arrived from outside and took on a C-rank Guardian so easily, and can also use an R-rank ability. They ask where he came from. Two people appear in front of Su Xiaobai and Zhao Ping. Zhao Ping recognizes Lan Qin, and Lan Qin asks her if she is having trouble with Tianmeng again, explaining that she has come to help her chop him up. She is dressed in a flower-patterned yukata and armed with a katana, and has long black hair. Lan Qin is Su Xiaobai's personal guard. A bespectacled girl with short green hair, wearing a lab coat, red shirt, short black pencil skirt, and black tights, says Zhao Ping can't do whatever he wants without them. Her name is Lai Xin, and she is also part of Su Xiaobai's personal guard. Su Xiaobai thought about the fact that Zhao Ping still had some warrior friends. Zhao Ping told them not to worry and hugged the main character's arm and said with a smile that the master had already helped her. Embarrassed, he told her not to do whatever she wanted and reminded her that she had hurt him last time. Lan Qin asked her about her calling him master. Zhao Ping announced that there could be no mistake, and Su Xiaobai could use infinite darkness. Pointing at him with her hand, she said that Longman had chosen the main character, and he was the heir to the throne. Lan Qin and Lai Xin look at Su Xiaobai in surprise. Zhao Ping says that they, without sparing their lives, also want to protect their beloved, and this means that he is their new master. The main character looks back at them in surprise. Night, Protoss, Longman residence. Su Xiaobai greedily eats the noodles, talking about how delicious they are. Lan Qin sits with a calm face, eyes closed. Lai Xin looks at Su Xiaobai in silence. Zhao Ping looks at the main character enthusiastically. The main character put a plate on the table next to the mountains of empty plates and said that he had eaten too much. Lai Xin thought about how much he hadn't eaten, and who would have thought that Longman would choose such a person. Su Xiaobai exhaled, and Zhao Ping asked if he liked the dishes. The main character said that they are very tasty. Lan Qin got up from her chair and spoke to him. She said that even though she didn't understand how Longman gave him the infinite darkness ability, if he didn't live up to Longman's expectations, he wouldn't be spared. Lai Xin, holding the cup in her hands, agreed with her and said that being their master was not so easy, and that he should fulfill Longaming's last wish to become the Protoss king and destroy all the pale-faced monsters. Su Xiaobai, hearing about becoming a king again, stiffened his face. Zhao Ping looked at him in silence. Su Xiaobai does push-ups, and after counting to 100 push-ups, he got up and drank a bottle of water. Wiping the sweat from his face, He reflects on what everyone is telling him to ascend to the throne of the Protos King and why it should concern him. A man with long white hair sitting behind him says that it concerns him. He turns around and is surprised to see that this is Longman, the Protos King. He sits with his legs crossed, his face calm. He tells him that he is not so stupid. Pointing at Longman in surprise, Suzayabai says that he should be dead. Longman agreed and said that his physical body was dead, but his soul had survived. Longman smiled. He explains that now he is completely powerless and no one else sees him except the main character. Longman spreads his hands and Suzayabai notices that it's translucent. Grinning, the protagonist asked him to stop. As he approached him, he said that he had pulled him out of another world and placed his own soul in his body. Leaning on the arm of the chair where Longman is sitting, the protagonist looked at Longman's face with a smile and asked if he just wanted to use his body. They looked at each other with a smile and Longman closed his eyes, said that he wasn't interested, and disappeared. The main character turned around at the sound of his voice and he appeared lying on the bed. Longman said that he only called him to Protos to make one deal. He explained that he gave him the strongest ability in this world, allowed him to possess endless riches and bestowed the highest status, and in return, he just needs to become the king of Protos and find those who staged a palace coup 3 years ago and killed Longman. After being silent for a while, Suzayabai made a displeased face and said that he wasn't interested and wouldn't do it. Longman closed his eyes and rested his head on the bed with his hands behind his head, saying that he wasn't in a position to refuse. Suzayabai walked over to the fruit plate and tore off a banana, saying that since Longman had summoned him to this world, he definitely had a method to subdue him. While opening the banana, the main character asked Longman to tell him what his trump card was. Longman crouched down and chuckled, noting that he was smarter than he thought. He explained that he had put a seal in his body, and it can only be removed after fulfilling his condition. Chewing a banana, the main character asked what kind of seal he was talking about. Longman replied that the seal is activated when the main character becomes attracted to a woman, and he will feel so unbearable pain that it is better to die than to live like this. He said that if he refused, his life would be like being pierced by 1,000 needles. The main character opened his mouth and bulged his eyes in horror. Suzayabai said that he didn't expect the Protos King to engage a pawn like this, and Longman replied that it was only for the sake of him listening to him. The main character asked him why, explaining that he was just an ordinary person, and he should have chosen a more suitable candidate for revenge. He paraphrased and suggested that for some reason, he could only choose it. Longman paused for a moment and thought that he was guessing correctly, and because of his incurable illness, his muscles had completely atrophied, making him look like a blank sheet of paper, and so he was best suited for the endless darkness. The main character fell into a chair and said that Longman gave him a second life, and he is very grateful to him. With a smile, he added that he was a real person, not his revenge toy. Longman smiled and said that he had underestimated him. Lankin is sitting on the roof. The light in the main character's room went out. She thought that he had finally finished talking to himself. Suzayabai lay down on the bed and exhaled, thinking that the existence of the seal was not a fact and that he might wake up in pain every morning. The door to his room opens a crack and a girl in a white tank top, purple sweatshirt, and black collar approaches his bed. A minigun barrel appears above the sleeping face of the main character. He wakes up, rubs his eyes, and sees an enraged girl with long pink hair tied in 2 knots pointing a minigun at him. Startled, he asked her what she wanted to do. She asked if he possessed the power of infinite darkness. Suzayabai crossed his arms in front of him, asked her to calm down, asked who she was, and remarked that such a huge cannon was not worth playing with. The girl told him to shut up and said that she wasn't as naive as Zhao Ping, and that he had used some sneaky trick to get Longming's power. Her name is Wang Xiyu, and she is Longming's little demon sister. The main character drew attention to the names mentioned to her and asked if she should be his personal guard. Wang Xiyu shot the pillow next to the main character, and the main character furiously asked her about how she wanted to kill him. She told him to recount in detail how he obtained the Longming power, threatening that otherwise he would end up like this pillow. Crying, she asked him about the fact that Longman really didn't die, and his soul is in the main character's body. He put a finger to his lips and told her to be quiet, because you can't let Longman's enemies know about this, otherwise he will also be killed. Wang Xiyu ran to Suzayabai in tears, calling him Longman, and he caught her face with his hand, not allowing her to get close, and told her that there was no need to snuggle up and that he was Suzayabai, not Longman. After a moment's silence, he asked her if she really wanted to please him, to take him to a place tomorrow night. Wang Xiyu tearfully asked which place. Wang Xiyu sits on the ground outside a building with pink lanterns, surrounded by people, and tells them to leave if they want to live. Embarrassed, she thought bitterly that if he dared to order her like this again, she would turn him into a sieve. A beautiful girl in a red dress asks the main character that he, judging by the appearance, is their first time. Another girl in a black dress tells him to relax and give free rein to his desires. Another girl tells him that, judging by the color of his face, He is not well. Another girl says that his face looks very tense and that they won't eat him. Su Xiaobai is sitting in a room with dim lights, surrounded by girls. Blushing and gritting his teeth from the strain, he thinks about how he should get rid of Longman's control and his seal and what he should endure. The girl next to him, clinging to him, called out to him. With tears in his eyes, he repeats in his mind that he needs to be steadfast, and the worry makes a mess. One of the girls moved closer to his neck, touching his shoulder and the back of his head. He shivered and decided that he couldn't stand it, so he screamed. Su Xiaobai walks out of the building, and Wang Xiyu asks him with a sneer if he is discouraged by calling him a pervert. The main character, with a drooping face, replies that she does not understand anything, and he is struggling with fate. He curses Longman in his mind. As they walk down the street, Wang Xiyu tells him that there will be a new Protoss Guardian group selection next month, and asks if he is going to prepare. He asks why he needs it, explaining that he doesn't want to keep an eye on the gate. She replied that becoming a Protoss Guardian was one of the conditions for inheriting the throne. Su Xiaobai stopped and turned to look at her, and she asked if he had changed his mind. He replied that he had drunk some water and needed to go to the toilet. Su Xiaobai breathed a sigh of relief as he stood in the dark alley behind the trash cans. He noticed a small bouncing ball with two toothy mouths. He held it up, wondering what kind of toy it was and noting that it looked unusual. A huge ball jumped next to the main character, scattering garbage cans. Su Xiaobai looks at it in surprise, wondering what it is. In front of him is a huge gray ball with several mouths, around which there are many small balls with mouths. This is a demonic level predator, a devourer demon. While holding the lollipop in his mouth, Wang Xiyu thinks about what might have happened to Longaming, that he chose Su Xiaobai as the heir to the throne. Noticing the commotion, she peeked into the alley, annoyed to see what the main character was doing there. She was surprised to see the main character dodging the attacks of a demon devourer, and thinks that as a demon-level predator, he might have ended up inside the city. Several small devouring demons are flying towards the main character, who has just landed with his hand on the ground. Su Xiaobai knows that he won't be able to dodge in time. To the main character's surprise, the little devourer demons are blown apart by the gunshot in front of him. He turns in the direction of the gunshots and sees Wang Xiyu, who mockingly asks if he was scared by putting the minigun on his shoulder. The main character got angry in response. Wang Xiyu turned to the person standing on the roof of the building and said that she could see her and she didn't have to hide. She explained with a smirk that no one in all of Protoss was capable of controlling demonic-level predators, much less bringing them into the city, except her. She called her Longman's wife. On the roof of the building stands a girl with long black hair, dressed in tight black and pink leggings. Pointing at her, Su Xiaobai asked if she was Longaming's wife. Wang Xiyu explained that she had a Protoss marriage contract on her body, and at the age of 20, she was supposed to become the wife of the Protoss king, and that she thought that she would become her little sister. The girl jumped down from the roof with the devouring demon and landed on top of it. She said not to joke around and asked how she could have married that loser. Seeing her, the main character blushed and his heart started pounding. Straightening her hair, the girl straightened up and said that you just need to kill him and then the prenuptial agreement will disappear. Her name is Muyuan Yuan. Su Xiaobai recalls how at school, a girl who looked very similar to her responded to his confession by saying that he was not her type and asked him to leave her alone. She turned and walked away, and he watched her go, holding the envelope with the heart in it. Su Xiaobai stared at Muyuan Yuan in amazement. He asked, "A goddess?" Wang Xiyu glanced at him, wondering why he was so strange and wondering if he had moved his head. Looking at Muyuan Yuan and extending his hand in her direction, he asked her if she had come to this world for him. She said he was a fool and slapped him across the face with her palm, sending him flying into the wall. Wang Xiyu shouted at her not to think that she wouldn't dare beat her up just because she was the bride. Muyuan Yuan calmly replied that she had already said that if she killed him, the marriage contract would be lost. Turning around, she asked how she could marry someone who sought pleasure in brothels. Wang Xiyu replied that she didn't care, and that this was Longaming's last will, and if she wanted to kill him, she would deal with her. The devouring demon opened its huge mouth at Wang. She turned, and the demon's mouth snapped shut, smashing her minigun to pieces. Muyuan Yuan said with a serious face that she would kill him before it was digested in her stomach. She thought about how she had hit the main character hard, and even if he didn't die, he must have been badly hurt, and she had to kill him quickly. A hand appeared from the dust cloud, trying to grab her, but Muyuan Yuan managed to dodge. She couldn't believe he still had the strength to respond. Su Xiaobai, who was standing in a cloud of dust, said that just a little bit more, and he caught her. She noted in her mind that he was using the infinite darkness and breathing calmly, even though he had just slammed into the wall. She thought that it was only his second day here, and he had already mastered this power to such a level. Su Xiaobai said it was good that she made him recover with her slap. He added that his goddess had not come to the hospital for all 3 years, and could not have come to this world for him. He said with a grin that they were just very similar. Mu Yuanyuan said that since he already had a loved one, she wouldn't marry him and that he should die today. He told her not to be deceived and that it had been a long time and he didn't feel anything for her for a long time. He added with a smile that he had already been informed that he might become king of Protos and asked her that she was not the only one who loved him. Su Xiaobai spread his hands and said that she shouldn't hold on to him and be jealous just because he went to the hotel. He pointed a finger at her and asked if she really liked him. The veins on Mu Yuanyuan's forehead bulged with anger, and she said that she only came for him because she had a marriage contract on her body. Blue energy enveloped her, and the main character looked down, and small devouring demons jumped out of the asphalt, and he flew into the air from their blows. They jumped towards him again as he fell to the ground. There was an explosion. Mu Yuanyuan said that it was all over and that the Death Eaters wouldn't leave a bone of him. She added that she didn't want to kill him, just that he was unlucky enough to get to this place. The dust cloud dispersed, and the protagonist, leaning his hand on the ground, agreed that he was unlucky with the place. Mu Yuanyuan was surprised. Desiccated devourer demons lay around him. The main character started to approach her and said that he wasn't going to become the Protos king at all, and that just because his body possessed infinite darkness, everyone insisted that he go a certain way, ignoring what he wanted. He said with a serious face that he had already died once, and he wanted to live this life for himself. She looked at him in surprise and then looked back. Wang Shiyu called out to her from inside the demon and asked if she knew why she was using the machine gun. Opening the demon's mouth with her hands, she said that it was because her power was too great and no one knew what could happen to the innocent if it wasn't controlled. Mu Yuanyuan thought that this demon's compressive strength was 2 tons. Wang Shiyu fully opened the demon's mouth, which was covered in black patterns, and said that she had the power of rank R cell enhancement. She explained that by changing her cells, her power becomes limitless. She quickly rushed forward to Mu Yuanyuan, saying that if she hit her, she might die. Mu Yuanyuan turned around in surprise and dodged the blow. Wang Shiyu's punch left a large crater in the asphalt. Jumping away from the buildings, Mu Yuanyuan soared into the air. Su Xiaobai closes himself off from the rubble of the asphalt. Mu Yuanyuan noted that Wang Shiyu was very short-tempered and that she would also be difficult to deal with because of her amazing explosive power. She decided, since they were close, to go to the bank. The veins on her face bulged. Wang Shiyu said that she was running too fast. A blue ball of energy appeared above Mu Yuanyuan. Su Xiaobai and Wang Shiyu's eyes became blank. Blue Moon's SSR rank power allows Mu Yuanyuan to control weak predators just by looking into their eyes. She was standing in the forest, touching the forehead of a dragon-like monster. If you use the light of the moon, its power increases many times, and it can control people for a short time. Lankin drew her katana from its scabbard, and Mu Yuanyuan noticed the glint of the sword on her face. Wang Shiyu and the main character looked on in surprise. Lankin slashed at Mu Yuanyuan with her katana and ended up behind her. Mu Yuanyuan's mouth started to bleed. Lankin told her to first ask her if she wanted to kill Su Xiaobai. Mu Yuanyuan started to fall down. The main character jumped up to meet her and caught her in his arms. He shouted for her to wake up and that she couldn't die here. Mu Yuanyuan's vision started to blur as the protagonist shouted at her not to close her eyes. She wakes up in the main character's house and looks around, wondering where she is. Mu Yuanyuan found that she didn't have a wound on her chest, even though she is sure that she was stabbed by a sword. She recalled Lankin drawing her katana in an instant, and she feels like she saw a demon. She concluded that she had terrible strength. Mu Yuanyuan walks out into the corridor, thinking that her chest still hurts and that if Lankin is around, there's no way she'll kill Su Xiaobai. She noticed the main character on the balcony, who was smiling and asking Lankin how she found them. He explained that she looked at him with disdain from the very beginning. She explained that she was his personal security guard and was obligated to ensure his safety at all times. She added that in Protos, it wasn't just Mu Yuanyuan who wanted to kill him. He said he understood that. Sitting on the roof, Lankin said that the Longman assassins should soon come out from behind the sandpaper, and that Su Xiaobai's every moment was under threat. She added that the other 2 heirs, Count Dracula, who has great influence in Protos, and Longman's older sister, Archangel Longyan, are also not happy about him. Lankin said that he was giving the impression of being a weakling right now, and there would be losses in the future anyway. Su Xiaobai said that he couldn't just watch Mu Yuanyuan fall to her death. Mu Yuanyuan recalled how the main character saved her and thought about how the blue moon had no effect on Lankin, and she would have killed her, but Su Xiaobai saved her. She wondered what he meant by that. The protagonist, with a smug smile, said that even though he wasn't interested in becoming the Protos king, he couldn't let his wife die. He added that she couldn't die. Mu Yuanyuan opened the door to the balcony loudly. Noticing her, the main character, blushing, told her to forget what he said. They shouted at him, asking him who he called his wife. She added that he should not think that she would marry him because he saved her. Mu Yuanyuan loudly announced that she would never marry him and told him not to make delusional dreams. Su Xiaobai was petrified with disappointment. In his mind, he wondered why he was being so brutally refused and if it was too direct. Lan Qin went up on the roof and called out to Mu Yuanyuan. They turned to her. Lan Qin unsheathed her katana and said that if she wanted to kill him again, she wouldn't use the sword hilt this time. She raised her katana over her head. Mu Yuanyuan noticed the words about the sword hilt in surprise and decided that it wasn't surprising that she didn't have a wound. Su Xiaobai noticed that she was a little scared and assumed that Lao Qin's sword had hurt her pride. Mu Yuanyuan thinks that as long as she is by Su Xiaobai's side, she should think of something else. She shouted, "Luan Niao." Then, she leaped high into the air. A huge bird appeared in the sky, and Su Xiaobai wondered if it was her beast and noticed that it was very different from the devouring demon. Lao Qin looked at it calmly. Mu Yuanyuan jumped on Luan Niao's back. Luan Niao said that two tiny people dared to address a celestial without respect. Lan Qin said that according to the ancient scriptures, it was a high-level beast. She held up her katana and said that she would cut him down as well, and that it should be very interesting. Luan Niao became nervous. Mu Yuanyuan called out to Su Xiaobai, asking if he wanted to marry her. She said she wanted to discuss their engagement without any other people present. The main character thought about how she wanted Lan Qin to leave, and noted that her face was so serious that he was really afraid. He suggested that Lan Qin rest and said that he would talk to her. She refused. He smilingly told her to calm down and that if she wanted to kill him, she probably wouldn't be able to do it because she had just barely jumped on her beast. Lan Qin turned around and paused for a moment, saying that if you wanted to die, then fine. She sheathed her katana. Su Xiaobai replied that it was fine and said that he was quite capable of fending for himself. A cicada is sitting on a tree. The protagonist told Mu Yuanyuan that she was putting so much effort into getting Lan Qin to leave, and asked her about the fact that she was afraid of her. He said it was just the two of them now, and she could tell him what she really needed. Mu Yuanyuan interrupted him and admitted that he wasn't as bad as she thought, and added that it didn't change anything because he only relied on one power, infinite darkness. The main character tensed up. She said that to the higher-ups, he was just a pawn. Su Xiaobai asked irritably if anyone had told her that her speech was very offensive. She said that the Protos annual Guardian selection would be held in a month, and that in front of the delegation, he could defeat her and become a Protos Guardian, and then she would help him ascend to the throne. He said that he had already been told about the selection of Guardians, and asked what it was. Mu Yuanyuan explained that Protos Guardians often die in the process of fighting predators, and that the selection round is held in 2 stages in order to identify outstanding newcomers who will replace the fallen Guardians. She said that this way the Protos provides itself with a guard of 72 people, and it allows the Protos to provide protection and preserve the human race. Su Xiaobai smiled and straightened his hair, asking if he won, their marriage contract would take effect. Mu Yuanyuan stopped him and told him not to lose his head in joy. She explained that becoming a Protos Guardian is not enough, and the main condition is to ascend to the throne, and she can only marry the Protos King. She said, first rank S-class, the strongest guardian that all Protos rely on is a hero. Blushing, she said that Longman was such a man and asked if he could become like this. Su Xiaobai shook with a tense face, and she yelled at him not to say anything. The main character tensely called Longman a liar in his mind, thinking that he was gray-haired, not very beautiful, and that he had a squishy face. Mu Yuanyuan warned him that for someone who didn't pass the first round, the competition would stop, and for Su Xiaobai, defeat was equal to the price of the throne. Grinning, she asked if he'd changed his mind about going. The main character smiled and said that he would be happy to join them. A month later, a guy with red hair and huge black devices on his wrists noticed the heavy pressure and announced that this place was worthy of the birth of guardians. Dragons fly around the mountain. Selection arena. A guy with red hair, standing in a crowd of people, thinks about how many participants are here and how they look very strong. Clenching his fist in front of him and grinning, he thought about how the blood of hell was about to boil in his body, and how he had a lot of work to do today. This is Ma Fugui, a resident of Magiadan village. Ma Fugui went inside the huge circular arena and noted that the level of this arena was worthy of his fist. The guy in the white tank top fell to the ground. Another bespectacled guy with white hair, dressed in a dainty black suit with 2 snowflakes, calmly told him not to touch it with his dirty hands and called it trash. The guy on the ground angrily retorted that he didn't intentionally. The people around them watched their conflict with anticipation, noting that the selection process hadn't even started yet. The guy in the white t-shirt charged at the guy with glasses, swinging his fist that was wrapped in purple energy. He shouted that he was stronger than him, so he would be fine. The bespectacled guy calmly raised his hand in front of him, pointing the palm with ice-covered fingers at the opponent. The guy in the tank top was trapped in an ice floe. People were whispering about how terrible it was, asking where this guy came from. A guy with short blonde hair said that he was reminded of SSR-level elementals with extreme ice abilities and a love of cleanliness. He pointed a finger at the bespectacled guy and added that if he wasn't mistaken about the love of cleanliness, then this guy should be the number 10s rank Archangel, the son of the Long Yang family. His name is Long Wei-yang, the Ice Soul Eater. Girls look at him with admiring eyes, shouting about how cool and beautiful he is. Ma Fugui came up behind Long, put his hand on his shoulder and said that he seemed very strong. The people in the crowd noticed in shock that Ma Fugui was a redneck and touched Long, wondering if he wanted to die. The man with the mohawk said it was Ma Fugui from Magiadunner, who had killed dozens of ghost-level predators in the past year, and added that he was a complete battle madman. Flames emerged from the device on Ma Fugui's arm, enveloping his arm. He told Long that he also had SSR-level elemental abilities and asked if he would fight. Long glared at him and told him to let go. A woman inhaled and exhaled smoke from a pipe while sitting on a raised platform, addressed the crowd and told them that they were too full of energy. With a smile, she told them to wait until the selection process started and added that it was still too early to start the game. This is Wu Zhu, judge of the Protos Guardians, a rank 9-tailed fox. Ma Fugui asked her not to misunderstand him and explained that he was just saying hello. Long, brushing off his shoulder, thought about how rude everyone was. Then, he thought about whether an outsider who had inherited infinite darkness would really come. A fat guy in the crowd remarked that they were lucky that Wu Zhu had left them, otherwise they would all have been dragged into this. The man with the katana pointed out that there were 2 new people with SSR ability among them, and sighed, saying that they probably didn't have a chance. With a smile, Wu Zhu said that the time was up and announced the start of the selection process. A hand rose from the back of the crowd, asking them to wait. Mu Yuanyuan said that one candidate hadn't come yet. Noticing her, Long adjusted his glasses and wondered if it wasn't for Su Xiaobai's sake that she was here, and assumed that it was because of their engagement. Wu Zhu clarified that she was talking about a guy who could use infinite darkness, and said that he was rumored to have defeated a C-rank Protos Guardian and that it would be more interesting to be here with him. Then she added that she would only wait another 5 minutes. 5 minutes later, people in the crowd are talking about how Su Xiaobai doesn't seem to be coming, and that he was just lucky to get the Longaming ability. Another voice in the crowd says that selecting guardians requires skill, and it's not unusual for him to change his mind. Another voice said that Su Xiaobai was probably afraid that he would lose in the first round and not be able to ascend the throne. Touching her face with her palm and smiling, Wu Zhu announced that time was up. Long straightened his tie and wondered if he really wasn't coming. Mu Yuanyuan looked down in frustration and thought about whether Su Xiaobai was cheating on her. The main character comes to the arena. Mu Yuanyuan smiled and thought that he had kept his promise. The main character, dressed in a black and red suit and a black robe with fur, stands with his personal guard and smiles, hands in his pants pockets. He notes that there are a lot of people here, and they don't look friendly. The angry crowd tells him they've been waiting for him, asks why he's dressed so lavishly, and if he's taunting them by offering to beat him in the first round. Another source notes that they came with Longman's guards, asking if he wanted to mob them. Ma Fugui thought about how he must be hot under so many layers of clothing. Angry, the main character replied that the guards were just showing him the way, and noted that in order to deal with them, it would be enough for him alone. Mu Yuanyuan looked at him with a smile, appreciating his provocations, and noted that he had just arrived and had already become the most important target. She asked him how the contest would end for him. Wu Zhu jumped to the ground and said that if everyone was here, then there was no need for any more discussions. She began twirling her tube and declared the Protos Guardian selection open, opening a passage in space with a blow of the tube. The crowd stared at the passageway in amazement, wondering what it was for and noting that there had never been anything like it before. Wu said that there will be 2 rounds and that the first round is really simple. She said that this gate will take them to a random place out of Protos, that all they need to do is survive for 5 days in their area. There are 3 areas: Forest of Mist, Dead Terrain, and Mountain Pass of Ruins. Wu Zhu announced that only those who survive will be able to participate in the second round. People were surprised to say that it was impossible to live outside the city walls for 5 days, and that the place was chosen randomly, and if they ended up in the hunter's nest, they would definitely die. Wu Zhu calmly replied that the Protos guards should protect the city with their lives, and if they were afraid, they could leave right now and try their luck next year. Many hands were raised in the crowd, announcing that they were giving up. Some of the contenders left the arena. Wu Zhu said that it looked like everyone here was ready and asked who wanted to enter the passageway first. Su Xiaobai volunteered first. Long looked at him in silence, and Mu Yuanyuan thought about what he was up to. The protagonist reflects that Mu Yuanyuan isn't the only one who wants to kill him, and if he can get to the scene first, he can survey the area and prepare, and this is definitely an opportunity that he can't miss. Zhao Ping told him with a worried face that she had a bad feeling. Su Xiaobai smilingly told her not to worry and that after he passed through the passageway, he would start looking for her first. The main character went through the passage and, coming out on the other side, found a huge octopus monster in front of him. He wondered if he was that unlucky. He ended up in the Lost Remains. A demon-level hunter, Collapsed Squid, asked the main character how dare he set foot on his territory, being a simple person. The monster hit him with a huge tentacle. Collapsed Squid was surprised to see that the main character, wrapped in purple energy, raised his tentacle above him with one hand. Suzayabai said that he was moved to the lair of a demon-level hunter and had no luck. Smiling, he added that he didn't have time for it, because he had made Xiaoping a promise and he had to find her quickly. Collapsed Squid quickly attacked him with several other tentacles. Suzayabai noted its speed and jumped back from the approaching tentacles, and they hit the ground. He landed on the tentacle and started running along it. The monster said it wasn't bad for a human. The main character thought that this hunter was too big, and if this continued, his location would soon be revealed, so he needed to finish this battle. He leapt from the tentacle towards Collapsed Squid's snout, swinging his fist. Wang Xiyu, Lan Qin, and Lai Xin are sitting on the steps of the arena. Wang Xiyu asked if the main character would be okay, explaining that if he lost, he would no longer be able to claim the throne. Lai Xin replied that Xiaoping would be fine, but because the rules of the competition had changed, even Xiaoping couldn't guarantee that he would make it to the second round. Lan Qin said that Suzayabai doesn't look like he can do it, but he's far from what he looks like. She explained that from the day he came to their house, he was extremely self-disciplined. She said he goes to bed at 10:30, wakes up at 7 in the morning, and follows his rest schedule flawlessly. Lan Qin said that he does 100 sit-ups every day, 100 push-ups, 100 squats, and runs 10 kilometers no matter how bad the weather is outside. She said that his body has such energy as if he stops moving, he will die, and that he is similar to her in his fighting ability. Suzayabai swings his fist for a punch and hits Collapsed Squid in the face, causing its eyes to bulge. The monster is enveloped in purple discharges, and the energy from it moves to the main character, who landed on the ground. He finds a desiccated body crawling out of Collapsed Squid's head and takes a deep breath, making a loud drawl. Suzayabai looks at him in surprise and wonders that the octopus hasn't died yet. Then he realizes that he is sending signals to other hunters. Behind the main character, energy was directed at the octopus and it was encased in ice. Behind him, Long came out of the woods and said that the hunter's master had called for help. He explained that they start out as human hunters, but devour so many people that they change and become stronger. Long held ice over his palm with a calm face. Suzayabai irritably asked who he was and said that he had taken the murder from him and was still talking. Long adjusted his glasses, too, and clicked his tongue, saying that if he hadn't, he would have been surrounded by hunters by now, and asked if he should thank him for his help. The protagonist indifferently turned away and headed in a different direction, saying that he didn't have time for him, and that he had to find Xiaoping. Finding that it was snowing around him, Suzayabai, who was glowing with purple energy, asked him what he wanted with a serious face. Long asked if he remembered the rule of this round. He explained that you need to survive 5 days in the area you will be sent to, and then you can go to the next round, which means that they allow them to kill each other. Grinning, the protagonist turned around and asked if he meant him. Meanwhile, in Misty Forest, a dark-skinned guy runs away from a crowd of zombies, cursing his luck. The bracelet on his arm ticks frequently, and he runs through the translucent blue barrier. There's an explosion. Xiaoping stands surrounded by motionless zombies lying on the ground. She notes that she needs to find the main character. She notices the ticking of the wristband and notes that it's the location watch they gave them, and it emits a warning. Xiaoping thought about how there was only one rule in this round: survive 5 days in the area you were sent to. She concluded that she couldn't go forward anymore or else she would lose. A loud beep sounds in the forest. Xiaoping jumps through the trees, thinking of Suzayabai waiting for her. A hooded figure standing on a tree watches Xiaoping run on the ground. Lifting his hood, the man grins ominously and says he's found her. She continues to run, looking back, and when she braked, turned around and told me to get out and not follow her. She asked him what he wanted. The hooded man chuckled viciously and jumped to the ground. He said with a smirk that it was worthy of Longman's protection and asked when she understood. She replied with a serious face that she understood from the beginning, and asked him what he wanted. He took off his hooded coat and underneath it was a man with short white hair wearing a camouflage tank top and pants. Touching his face with his hand and licking his lips, he replied that someone wanted to take the life of her master, Suzayabai, and demanded that she bring him to him. This is Li, Lightning God. Xiaoping told him not to even dream about it. She started counting 10 times, 20 times. Li was surprised to find that he had sunk a little into the ground. Xiaoping said 30 times. Gravity field. Looking down at her feet, which were knee-deep in the ground, Li grinned and noted that she could manipulate gravity. Suzayabai and Long look at each other with their hands in their pants pockets. Long says that Suzayabai is nothing to him right now, and he can't be his opponent yet. Tensing, the protagonist thought about what he wanted. Long told him not to be nervous and said that he was just here to tell him something. Passing by the main character, Long asked him to try and survive and passed on. Su Xiaobai paused for a moment, looking after him, and asked why he had said that to him. Long calmly replied that someone wanted him dead. The main character calmly replied that there were quite a few people who wanted him dead. Long clicked his tongue and said he didn't understand. He explained that this became clear as soon as the rule was announced. The rule was changed because it would make it easier to kill Su Xiaobai. Long said that a person who can change the rules is not something they can ignore. He added that if he wants to stay, he must survive the first round. Su Xiaobai was thinking about who Long was and why he was helping him, but he suddenly noticed something. He turned around, not knowing what that feeling was. He looked into the forest and realized that it was coming from there. Li punches Zhao Ping with an elbow, and she blocks. Lightning bolts are emitted from Li's strike. He unfolded his hand and waved it in front of him, letting out lightning bolts. Zhao Ping was sent flying backwards by the impact, smashing through tree trunks along the way and falling to the ground, leaving a small crater in it. Clearing her throat, she sits on the ground and thinks about how she would never have thought that he had the ability to shoot lightning. She speculated that he used lightning bolts against gravity, and that according to the information, he was just a simple soldier and he shouldn't have this ability. Zhao Ping got to her feet, shaking, and decided that he was too dangerous and she couldn't let him find Su Xiaobai. Li lands on his knees in front of her, leaving a trail of lightning in his wake. He says that since she doesn't want to bring him to Su Xiaobai, then he will use her body to find him. Li took out a knife and it sparkles with lightning. Zhao Ping exhaled and told him not to even think about touching Su Xiaobai while she was here. Three guys notice the main character approaching at a fast run and recognize him as the guy who was talking nonsense. They point out with a grin that he was transported here, just like them, and that he was unlucky. Running through them, Su Xiaobai lifts two of them into the air. He thinks with a serious face that this feeling must mean that Zhao Ping is in danger. Zhao Ping is lying on the ground, panting and shaking. She struggles to her hands and knees and thinks that she must help her master, and that he can't die now. Li looks down at her with a sinister smile, noting her beauty, and asks why she serves such a bad master. He raises the knife, wrapped in lightning, but turns around in surprise, noticing something. The main character's elbow hits him in the neck, causing blood to gush out of his mouth, and he drives him into a rock at high speed. Zhao Ping turns around in surprise. The dust cloud clears and the main character is seen in it. He looks at Li, who is imprinted in a huge dent in the stone. He's unconscious. Su Xiaobai, trying to catch his breath, notes with a serious face that he arrived on time. Sitting next to Zhao Ping, who is sitting with her back against a tree, he apologizes and says that he caused her to get hurt. Zhao Ping tells him not to worry, and her injuries are not serious, and she will feel better after resting. Keeping her head down, she says that as a security guard, she not only failed to protect her master, but forced him to come to her rescue and that she should apologize. The protagonist paused worriedly in response. Zhao Ping, noting that this forest was very large, asked how he found it. Su Xiaobai replies that he seems to be able to sense when she is in danger and even sense her location. She looked at him in surprise and wondered if that power was working on him. Li stirred in the stone. The wind blew and Zhao Ping coughed. The main character noticed this, handed her his jacket and told her to cover herself with it and rest while he watched her. Zhao Ping protested, but Su Xiaobai said with a smile that she had taken care of him for the past month and even injured herself for his sake, and now it was his turn to take care of her. After draping his jacket over her shoulders, Zhao Ping smiled and thanked him. Zhao Ping is asleep, and Su Xiaobai is sitting on the ground nearby. 5 sharp spikes appeared from the ground behind the protagonist, and the latter reacted quickly and tore them off with his hand. He turned to Li and said that he couldn't understand why he didn't absorb his energy automatically. Su Xiaobai then announced that he was pretending to be dead. Li retracted back to his hand the 5 gray limbs emanating from his arm, and said that it wasn't easy to kill him. He thought that if it hadn't been for the predator drug, that elbow strike would have killed him. The protagonist thought that he had absorbed the energy of the C-rank guardian Zhang Tianquan, and that together with the training of the past month, he could reach B-rank. The veins on Li's body swelled up, his body started to turn gray, and he told the protagonist not to get conceited ahead of time. Many long gray spikes came out of Li's back, and he told the protagonist to feel its power. Su Xiaobai stared in surprise, not understanding what it was. Li replied that this is his ultimate form, strong predator flesh and SSR class lightning power. He stands surrounded by his spikes and lightning bolts, his hands raised in front of him. Laughing madly with tears in his eyes, he said that he now had the best B-class strength and that the main character would die. Su Xiaobai punched him in the face and told him to stop talking nonsense. Li started to fall backwards from the impact, and the main character quickly moved behind him. He grabbed him by the face with his hand and smashed him into the ground. Looking down at Lee lying on the ground, the main character said that if he is the best in B class, then the main character is the top of B class. Lee, opening his eyes, thinks that the most terrible thing about the endless darkness is that it quickly drains a lot of energy from the enemy. He thought about how Suzayabai had mastered this ability to such an extent in just a month, and decided that this mission had ended in failure. A man in a chemical protection suit holds a syringe of green liquid in his hand and asks if he is sure. He explains that the predator drug is still in the experimental stage, its effect is unstable, and therefore its life may be in danger. Lee lies chained to a table with multiple sensors on his body, the veins on his body bulged and he gritted his teeth. The scientist says that object number 1 has a strong rejection rate, and that the heart rate has exceeded 210. He asked if Lee wanted to stop the experiment. The man smiled and panted, telling him not to stop. Lee stands in the office in front of an elderly man with long gray hair. The man tells him that although he survived the experiment, the predator's cells did not fully integrate into his body, and he only received the predator's strong flesh, but did not gain the second ability. He added that this is a setback. The man said that they needed one more thing to create an artificial predator with dual abilities. An elderly man with empty eyes said that they needed Suzayabai's body, the infinite darkness crystal. Raising his hand and glowing with purple energy, the protagonist asks Lee how he became a predator and kept his sanity, who his boss is, and what their plan is. Lee mockingly asked if he thought he would tell him. The main character stared at him in silence, a vein bulging on his face. Lee said with a smirk, still lying on the ground, that according to his calculations, Suzayabai should be significantly weaker. He added that he was very curious about why his growth had so far exceeded his expectations. Without changing his expression, Suzayabai replied that it was because he was gifted. Lee noticed that a thunderstorm had started and thought that the heavens would not let him die. He grinned and asked the protagonist if he knew why a thunderstorm caused lightning. Suzayabai asked him the last words. Lee went on to explain that when the positive and negative charges in the cloud attract each other, there is a discharge of electricity. Zhao Ping ran over in a panic, shouting that it was dangerous. Lightning struck the ground right in front of the main character, who was thrown back from its impact. The lightning strike left a huge crater in the ground, and Suzayabai was shocked to find Zhao Ping lying in it. Lee said it's very easy for him to create enough negative charge to attract lightning. As he passed Zhao Ping lying on the ground, he said that the fact that she was so willing to die for the main character hindered his plan. But the lightning gave him enough strength, and even God is helping him. Surrounded by lightning, Lee spread his hands, palms up, and asked with a smirk why Suzayabai thought he could win. The veins on the protagonist's face bulged with anger, and he asked Lee how dare he harm Zhao Ping. He leapt towards him, swinging his fist, and shouted that he wanted him to pay with his life. Lee stretched out his hands and said, "Court deaf." Numerous tires from Lee's body pierced through the protagonist's body, but the protagonist ignored them and continued to close the distance. Lee nervously gritted his teeth and thought that he was crazy, noticing that he continued to attack despite his attacks. Suzayabai's fist hit Lee in the nose, spraying blood from his face. With a punch of his fist, the protagonist knocked Lee into the ground. He continued to punch him in the face, driving his head into the ground. As Suzayabai approached him, he said that he didn't care who he was or who was behind him, that he would find them one by one. He said, "An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth." The energy from Lee's body rushed towards Suzayabai and he fell to the ground, shrouded in electricity. The main character and Zhao Ping are lying on the ground unconscious next to each other. Suzayabai, breathing heavily after training, accepts the water bottle that Zhao Ping hands him. She tells him to freshen up and that the trials can be dangerous. She asked if he really decided to participate. Wiping his face with a towel, he asked her why she was asking if they all wanted him to participate. Zhao Ping replied that as a bodyguard, she wanted him to participate, but as his friend, she didn't want to see him take any risks. Suzayabai looked at her in surprise and thought about how he thought that they all considered him a tool for Longaming's revenge, and that he didn't expect her to care about him from the bottom of her heart. Sitting up, Zhao Ping said that she wasn't a Protoss guardian, so she could also sign up and go with him so she wouldn't have to worry. She turned to him with a smile. In some office, a girl with brown hair pulled back in a ponytail, wearing a Chinese dress, says that the operation failed and the Lee signal is gone. She speculates that with her powers, Lee couldn't possibly lose to Suzayabai and assumed that their information was incorrect. An elderly man with empty eyes said that they were missing something and assumed that there was a high-ranking expert behind him. The girl replied that she thought he was surrounded only by 4 bodyguards. The older man said it wasn't something they should be thinking about right now and that there were 4 days left before the selection. He told her to hurry up and return Lee's body. Mu Yuanyuan stands over the unconscious Zhao Ping and Suzayabai. She thought about how she needed to kill Suzayabai while she still had the chance, and then the engagement would be called off. She walked up to him and waved her hand, telling him not to blame her. She grabbed the zombie's heart with her hand. There are a lot of zombies around them. Mu Yuanyuan guessed that the smell of blood attracted the predators around. She looked back at the main character and disapprovingly noted that he could not fight after a small discharge of electricity. After dealing with the zombies, she stepped on the head of one of them and said that predators of this level, regardless of the number, are no match for her. The ground shook as a huge monster with a visor on its head emerged from the ground. She looked at it in surprise, noting that it was huge. A demon-level predator. The Arbiter had told her that attacking his minions was a terrible mistake. He swung his arms and slapped the ground. Mu Yuanyuan quickly jumped away and bounced off the tree, leaping towards the referee, swinging her fist for a punch, asking where the referee was looking. To her surprise, he quickly flung her into the ground with his palm. Standing in the crater created by the impact, she reflected that a predator's level depends on the number of people they have eaten, and once they eat 100 people, they mutate into a ghost level. She notices that judging by the referee's strength, he is far from that level. She guessed that it had eaten more than 1,000 people and had become a demon-level predator. The referee shouted at her to die in a rage and punched her. Mu Yuanyuan was surprised to see that the range of this attack would hit both Su Xiaobai and Zhao Ping. The referee throws a lot of very fast punches and says that no one can escape from his fist. Standing there, surrounded by huge craters in the ground, the Arbiter concluded that the execution was over. He then notices that Mu Yuanyuan is still standing still and asks how she was able to block his attacks. In front of her is a huge ghost-level predator, a macho rhinoceros. Smiling and flexing his muscles, he says that he enjoyed it and that strong and ferocious punches are what he loves. Mu Yuanyuan thought about how she didn't expect that she would need a predator here that gets happier when it is beaten. Looking back at the protagonist and Zhao Ping lying in the crater, she thought about how they were still alive and she couldn't leave them. She was thinking that Su Xiaobai had saved her once, and she would repay him for it. The macho rhino, showing off his muscles, told the referee to hit him. The referee asked what people had done to him and said that he, too, would die. He punched the macho rhino in the face. He staggered a little, exhaled heavily, and said he was pleased. Mu Yuanyuan thought that the macho rhino was tough, but there was a limit to everything, and that it was possible to lose at this rate. One of them pulled a map from the back pocket of her pants that said Phoenix. The referee hit the macho rhino again, but his fist froze in midair. Mu Yuanyuan announced visual sharing mode. The macho rhinoceros that Mu Yuanyuan had taken control of looked into the referee's eyes with his fingers spread out in front of him. The referee, frozen in one position, said that he could not move, and noted that Mu Yuanyuan has a control technique, but with this level, it will not be possible to restrain him for more than 3 seconds. A voice shouted that 3 seconds would be enough to kill him. The blue vortex pierced through the referee's body. A ghost-level predator, a blue phoenix, landed after stopping spinning. The referee was shaking with a huge hole in his torso and shouting that he was not ready for this. He fell to the ground. Mu Yuanyuan rejoiced at the victory, panting heavily. Phoenix told her not to relax, explaining that he just fell, not died, and consciousness will return to him. Phoenix explained that the Arbiter has the unique ability of exploitation, with which he can enslave creatures in his territory and appropriate their life energy. He added that even if they beat him again, they would continue to supply him with energy. The hole in the referee's body is slowly being closed. Phoenix said that if they were going to fight here, they wouldn't win, and that it was better to move away, taking advantage of the opportunity. Mu Yuanyuan asked tensely, "Run away." 4th day of the first round of selection for the Protoss Guard. When Su Xiaobai woke up, he sat up abruptly, calling out to Zhao Ping while panting heavily. Looking around, he wondered where he was and how he'd gotten here. He noticed Zhao Ping, who was panting heavily as she lay on the ground, shrouded in blue energy. Next to him was a small fluffy white animal that was emitting blue energy from its hands. This is a low-level predator, the white hedgehog. Su Xiaobai asked what he was doing with Zhao Ping. Startled, the white hedgehog jumped on Zhao Ping's chest, which angered the protagonist. Mu Yuanyuan told him not to scare him and explained that he was healing their wounds. Su Xiaobai asked if she had brought them here. Mu Yuanyuan turned to the side and said that she just didn't want to be left in debt, and that if she saw them being eaten by predators, she would have nightmares. Su Xiaobai sat down next to Zhao Ping and asked if she could be cured. Mu Yuanyuan replied that she doubted it and explained that such injuries are usually not something that people live with, but her pulse is fine and she has never seen anything like it before. She said the injuries were serious, and even if she recovered, she wouldn't live long. The main character, looking grim, said that she was injured while protecting him. As he got to his feet, he asked Mu Yuanyuan if she would help him for Zhao Ping's sake. Su Xiaobai, his face grim and shrouded in lightning, said that it was his duty to expose whoever was behind all this. A month earlier, Longman tells Su Xiaobai that he will spend the whole month learning how to use infinite darkness, adding that they don't have much time and he will tell everything he knows and the rest is up to him. Longman said that they would train instead of sleeping and that he should be ready for it. Sitting on the bed, the main character replied that he understood that others should not be allowed to notice. Longman asked if he had guessed why. Suzayabai chewed on an apple and said that he was the subject of discussion when he first entered Protos and used infinite darkness, and if they noticed him using it again, they would consider him a braggart and kill him. The main character assumed that next Longman would tell him to have fun to the fullest, have fun from the heart and do whatever comes to mind. He added that because of the marriage contract, Muyuan Yuan wanted him dead and that Longming knew this would happen. Suzayabai said that if he just signed up to participate in the Protos Guardian selection competition, his plan to ascend the throne would be discovered immediately or he might not live to see the day of the competition. He told him that he thought that since he was full of energy and fervor, he would participate for the sake of a beautiful woman. Longman replied with a serious face that for an 18-year-old, he was very perceptive. End of the first round of selection for the Protos Guard. An owl is sitting in a tree. Suzayabai, hiding in a tree, thinks about how the person he is looking for has changed the competition rules to hide his identity, and that since today is the last day of the selection, if he doesn't want his secrets to surface, he has come to get rid of someone's bodies and cover your tracks. He decided to set up an ambush near the crater where Li's body is lying, and hope that with luck, he will catch the person and find out who is behind all this. After a while, a girl in a Chinese dress appears in front of him. Her name is Mo Yan, and she is a master of weapons. She threw the chain forward, and it wrapped around Li's body and yanked him out of the ground. Pulling him over, Mo Yan mockingly said that he had been turned into a predator and was still weak. She said that she would like to meet Suzayabai and noticed a bolt of lightning from behind rushing at her. The lightning left a wide trail on the ground, and the main character said that he tried to concentrate and release the energy from the tip of his finger, and it was not so difficult. Holding out a smoking finger that was shrouded in lightning, he grinned and said that he had completely mastered this power. In front of him was a large shield with a monster's face engraved on it, shrouded in lightning, and standing in a cloud of dust. Putting the shield aside, Mo Yan announced that it was an SR rank ability and she could change the appearance of her weapon at will. She said that she was sent to clean up the corpse and Suzayabai was ambushed and praised him for his resourcefulness. Under the strain of the lightning bolt that enveloped the main character's body, his shirt tore and he angrily demanded that she tell him who was plotting against him. A huge bolt of lightning broke out in the forest. Mo Yan pointed out that he had only mastered the Li ability a few days ago and was already able to unleash so much power, and added that their information about him was indeed incorrect. She decided that this time she would have to test his strength to the fullest and rushed in his direction. Mo Yan jumped in and turned the weapon into a naginata, saying that if he wanted to find out where she worked, he would have to force her. She struck out with her naginata, and Suzayabai blocked the blow with one hand holding the lightning spear. He said he could use a gun, too. She noticed in surprise that he had made a weapon out of lightning and ran away, throwing a smoke screen. The smoke cleared and Suzayabai looked around tensely, not finding Mo Yan. Mo Yan aims at the main character by turning his weapon into a sniper rifle.